Nathan Reed stepped out of the revolving glass doors of the Astoria Grand Hotel, adjusting the cuffs of his custom-tailored suit as his polished shoes clicked against the marble. The sun was beginning to set behind the New York skyline, casting a soft amber hue over the city. But Nathan barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, already moving through deals, meetings, and acquisitions yet to come. As CEO of Reed Global Properties, he was used to living 3 steps ahead. His security detail waited beside the sleek black car, doors already open. But just as he reached the curb, a small, uncertain voice broke through the city noise. "Mr. Excuse me." Nathan turned, expecting a reporter or a fan. What he saw instead made him pause. A little girl stood alone, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Long blonde hair fell past her shoulders in loose waves, and her wide blue eyes were locked on his. She wore a simple pink dress, slightly wrinkled, and clutched a tiny backpack with both hands. Her voice trembled. Are you Nathan Reed?" He blinked, frowning. "Yes. Who are you?" Without answering, the girl stepped closer. She extended her arm and slowly turned her wrist, revealing a pale birthmark just below her palm, a small, oddly shaped patch, almost like a faded crescent moon. "I was told," she said carefully, "that if I ever saw someone with a birthmark like this, I should talk to him." Nathan's breath caught in his throat. His pulse slowed, like the world had tilted ever so slightly. He knew that mark. He had one just like it, in the exact same spot. A quirk of skin tone he used to tease himself about as a teenager, and only one other person had ever known about it. Rachel Monroe. Suddenly, his carefully constructed world of numbers and steel cracked at the edges. Rachel. The name alone made his chest tighten. With memory. With regret. She had been his first real love years ago, back when he still believed in things like possibility and connection. She had been fierce and gentle, artistic and grounded. She wanted children. A home. A life he hadn't been ready for. So he walked away. The girl looked up at him, her hands now folded nervously in front of her. "My name is Chloe," she whispered. Nathan knelt slowly to her level. "Chloe, how do you know Rachel Monroe?" Her lip trembled and she dropped her gaze. "She was my mom." It felt like the air had been pulled from the room. Nathan struggled to process what she'd just said, his mind racing through impossibilities, denials, but the truth stood right in front of him. Chloe, Rachel's daughter. "Where is she?" he asked, barely managing to keep his voice even. "She died." Chloe's words were quiet, steady, too steady for a child her age. Nathan stood up too quickly. His head spun. "When?" "2 weeks ago. She told me that if anything ever happened to her, I should find you. She said you'd know what to do." He was silent. His security team had stepped closer, sensing something unusual but not intervening. A crowd had started to gather a few feet away, curious but distant. "Where are you staying?" he asked finally. "With Miss Clara. She lives next door to where we used to live. But she said she can't keep me much longer." Chloe looked down. "I don't have anywhere else." Nathan glanced around, suddenly aware of the world again. The photographers, the eyes, the whispers. He turned to his driver. "Cancel my appointments for tonight." Then to Chloe, "Come with me." She hesitated, but something in his voice must have reassured her. She followed him into the car, backpack clutched tightly against her chest. Inside, she sat rigid, not saying a word. Nathan stared at her through the reflection in the glass. The shape of her nose, the curve of her mouth. Familiar. Too familiar. He had spent his whole life building towers and legacies. But now in the back of a silent car with a child he didn't know. A child that might be his. None of it seemed to matter. And deep down, he already knew. This moment had changed everything. Nathan Reed didn't bring strangers to his penthouse. It was a rule, one of many he had created to maintain the illusion of control over a life that often felt dictated by headlines and shareholder demands. But that night, as the elevator doors slid open to reveal the 42nd floor of his high-rise apartment overlooking Central Park, Chloe walked in. A quiet presence with wide eyes and a firm grip on her backpack. The place was all glass, stone, and clean lines. Elegant, pristine. It had been designed to impress, not to comfort. Chloe didn't say anything. She just stood near the window staring out over the darkening city. Nathan didn't know what to do. He had spoken in boardrooms, at global conferences, had once calmed a panicked investor minutes before a billion-dollar deal. But now, faced with a little girl who might be his daughter, he was completely lost. He watched her quietly as she traced patterns on the glass with her fingertip. "Are you hungry?" She shrugged. He ordered room service, grilled cheese, tomato soup, and a slice of chocolate cake. She ate slowly, neatly, barely making a sound. After dinner, Nathan tried to ask her questions, simple ones, but she answered with short words, her gaze distant. It wasn't defiance. It was grief. And it was too big for her small frame. The next morning he called a private investigator. He needed answers, not assumptions. Blood tests, dates, documentation. He told himself it was for clarity, not detachment. But even as he rationalized, he found himself in a department store that afternoon, staring blankly at children's clothing racks. He had no idea what sizes fit an 8-year-old. He ended up buying everything in multiples: dresses, t-shirts, shoes, pajamas, books, even a lavender comforter with small white stars. That night, Chloe picked the guest room at the end of the hall. She sat on the edge of the bed as Nathan laid out the new bedding and let her choose the color for the walls. She didn't smile, but her fingers lingered on the soft fabric. "You can decorate it however you want," Nathan said. She nodded. "Mom always let me paint one wall in our apartment." That detail, so ordinary, broke something in him. It wasn't just grief Chloe carried. It was a life that had existed without him. A life with Rachel. A life he had walked away from. Over the next few days, Nathan rearranged meetings and canceled press appearances. He told the board he was handling a private matter. He didn't explain. They didn't ask. He hired a nanny to help temporarily, a gentlewoman named Elise, but Chloe refused to speak to her. She followed Nathan instead. Quietly. Like a shadow. He was surprised by how quickly her presence altered the energy of the apartment. There were books scattered on the table now, a stuffed bear on the couch, crayons rolled off the counter. One night, he found her asleep on the hallway rug, with a half-drawn picture clutched in her hand. He carried her to bed without waking her. The DNA results arrived on a Friday morning. Positive. Nathan didn't cry. He didn't panic. He just sat in his office, staring at the letter, feeling the weight of it settle into his chest. Chloe was his daughter, his flesh and blood. And somehow part of him had already known. He didn't tell her right away. He let her lead the next few days. She began to speak more. She asked about his work, about the city. She told him how Rachel used to play music in the kitchen on Sunday mornings, and how her favorite book was Matilda. Nathan found himself reading it to her every night. His voice was stiff at first, but Chloe didn't mind. She leaned against his arm, listened, trusted. In those small moments he realized something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe ever. Peace. By the second week, Nathan realized something that terrified him more than mergers or market crashes. He didn't want to return to his old life. He still woke up at 5 a.m., still checked the overseas numbers, still answered calls from the London office. But somewhere between morning emails and breakfast, he started making pancakes. For Chloe. And he actually liked it. He started learning which syrup she preferred. Blueberry, how she arranged her napkin every time, folded in half, corner over corner, and how she only ever smiled with her eyes, like she wasn't sure if she had permission to be happy yet. But life outside the penthouse was not slowing down. Reporters began circling. Paparazzi caught images of Nathan walking hand in hand with a small girl outside a bookstore in Soho. Rumors exploded online, speculation, accusations, curiosity. Headlines screamed, "Nathan Reed's secret child? Scandal in the skyline. The CEO and the mystery girl." Nathan tried to ignore it, but the board of directors didn't. A scheduled conference call quickly turned into a confrontation. "You should have disclosed this," one of them snapped. "It's personal," Nathan replied firmly. "Nothing is personal when it affects shareholder confidence. The press is spinning this as a scandal. Investors are nervous." Nathan looked at the rows of faces on the screen, men and women in suits, their voices flat, their concern purely financial. He had once believed this was his tribe. Now they felt distant, cold. That night, Chloe overheard part of a phone call. Nathan didn't notice her standing at the edge of the hallway, just listening, fingers clenched in her pajama sleeve. "You don't want me here," she said later, barely above a whisper. "What?" He turned to her, startled. "You said I'm a problem. That people are mad about me." His chest ached. "No, Chloe, no. Listen to me." He knelt in front of her. "None of this is your fault. Not one bit." She looked away. "You're important. You have stuff. Big stuff. I don't want to mess it up." He reached out slowly and rested a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't mess anything up. You're the best thing that's happened to me in a long, long time." But the damage was done. Chloe started retreating. She grew quieter. She no longer joined him for breakfast. Elise said she barely ate lunch. Nathan tried to break through, but nothing seemed to work. Then came the knock on the door. A social worker, Ms. Aldridge, stood outside, credentials in hand, her expression neutral but probing. "There was a report," she said. "An anonymous tip. Concerns about the child's well-being and the sudden change in guardianship. I need to speak with you both." Nathan's blood ran cold. He complied. He answered every question. Showed documents, proved paternity. But Chloe, when questioned alone, froze. She said little. Her voice shook. Nathan watched helplessly from across the room. "I want to stay here," Chloe said eventually. "But if you think I shouldn't, it's okay." That night, Ms. Aldridge left with a promise to follow up. Nathan barely slept. The next morning, Elise gently handed him a crumpled drawing she found in Chloe's room. It showed a house with two stick figures inside, one big, one small. Both were smiling, but outside the house was a gray figure with no face, looming above them. Nathan stared at it for a long time. By noon, he canceled a major speaking engagement and drove Chloe to a small coastal town 2 hours away, a quiet place Rachel once mentioned in a letter he had never thrown away. He rented a cottage for the weekend, just the two of them. They walked on the beach. They built a crooked sandcastle. He taught her how to skip stones. She laughed, really laughed, when his stone bounced sideways and smacked him in the shin. That night they made spaghetti from scratch and ate it on the porch wrapped in blankets. "I like it here," she said. "Me too." She turned to him, eyes thoughtful. "Did you love my mom?" Nathan took a deep breath. "Yes, more than anyone. But I didn't know how to show it back then." Chloe nodded. Then for the first time she leaned into him without hesitation. And that was when Nathan realized love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about staying when it got hard. And he was done running. Back in New York, Nathan returned to his penthouse with Chloe, carrying more than just sand in their shoes. The weekend had shifted something between them, not just comfort, but trust. A quiet thread of connection was finally starting to hold, but the world outside hadn't paused. The social worker, Ms. Aldridge, returned for another visit, this time with more questions and a subtle shift in tone. She wasn't hostile, but she was cautious, protective. And Nathan understood why. Chloe wasn't a press release. She was a child, and the system had every right to ensure she was safe, especially now that her presence had sparked so much media attention. There was also Clara, the elderly neighbor who had cared for Chloe in the days after Rachel's passing. Nathan arranged to meet her in person, driving across the city with Chloe one chilly afternoon. Clara lived in a modest apartment filled with plants, mismatched cushions, and the smell of lemon balm tea. She welcomed them both warmly but pulled Nathan aside as Chloe sat quietly with a photo album in her lap. "She adored Rachel, you know," Clara said gently. "Called her the strongest woman she ever knew. And when Rachel got sick, Chloe never left her side." Nathan swallowed the knot forming in his throat. "She's been through more than most adults," Clara continued. "But she's got a good heart. That little girl just wants a place to land. So whatever you're doing, don't make her feel temporary." Those words stayed with him. Meanwhile, his work life began to unravel. He missed 2 board meetings. Clients complained about delayed responses. One investor threatened to pull out unless Nathan reassured him personally. His assistant, Miranda, loyal, sharp, overworked, began to grow concerned. "People are noticing, Nathan," she warned. "The image, the silence, it's costing us." Nathan had built a career out of being bulletproof, calculated, always composed. Now his silence was making people nervous. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to care the same way he once had. Chloe was painting her bedroom wall that week. She'd chosen a soft teal, and the floor was covered in plastic sheets and old towels. Nathan offered to help, but she insisted on doing it herself. "I want it to feel like mine," she said, dabbing carefully around the edges. He stood in the doorway watching her, something swelling in his chest. Later that night, she handed him a folded paper, her school admission form. He hadn't realized how behind he was in enrolling her. She didn't complain, just handed it to him and said, "I think I'm ready." It hit him hard. Chloe didn't just want a home. She wanted a life. One that included teachers and friends and normalcy. The next morning, Nathan met with a private school downtown. It was small, diverse, and focused on emotional well-being as much as academics. The headmaster looked at Nathan, the billionaire CEO, with a mix of awe and skepticism. "Most of our students," he said carefully, "don't come from your world." "I'm not sure I do anymore either," Nathan replied with a small smile. The school accepted Chloe for a trial period. She started the following week. And Nathan, for the first time in his career, set his calendar to revolve around a child's school pickup time. Nathan arrived at Chloe's new school earlier than usual. The parking lot was still half empty, the buzz of dismissal a few minutes away. He sat in his car, watching kids run across the playground while a teacher blew a whistle, her coat flapping in the cold wind. For a man who used to count time in stock values and asset graphs, he now measured it in minutes before the final bell. But that day, something felt off. When Chloe stepped through the school gate, she wasn't smiling. Her head was down, shoulders drawn in. Nathan walked toward her. "What happened?" She hesitated, then handed him a crumpled paper. It was a school newsletter, mostly announcements, bake sales, and PTA notices. But in the corner was a printed image of Nathan and Chloe, taken from a gossip blog. The headline read, "Father or PR Stunt." Inside, Nathan reads, "Sudden Transformation." Nathan's stomach sank. "Some kids were whispering," Chloe mumbled. "Said I was a publicity thing, that you only kept me around because of the cameras." Nathan knelt to meet her eyes. "Hey, That's not true. You know that, right? She nodded slowly, but her lips stayed tight. That night, Nathan sat alone in his home office, phone buzzing nonstop, emails piling in, investors wanting reassurance, a morning show requesting a live interview, a journalist claiming to have spoken with someone from Rachel's old neighborhood. He ignored them all, until a text from Miranda appeared. "Check this, it's going viral." Attached was a video clip. Security footage leaked from the Astoria Grand Hotel weeks ago. The moment Chloe first approached him on the sidewalk. Their entire interaction, her nervous voice, his frozen reaction, everything. Online, the video had become a firestorm. Some praised his authentic emotion. Others accused him of manipulating a child for PR redemption. Dozens of opinion pieces, reaction videos, and blind speculations were now flooding the internet. And worse, Ms. Aldridge called. "I need to schedule a formal review," she said. "This exposure is raising questions about Chloe's safety." Nathan didn't argue. He agreed to meet her the next day. But inside, something cracked open. He realized it didn't matter how carefully he built walls. The world would always find a way in. And Chloe was at the center of it now. So that night, after dinner, he sat across from her at the kitchen table. "I want to ask you something," he said gently. "And I want you to answer honestly." She looked up. "Do you feel safe here?" Chloe blinked, then gave the smallest nod. "I don't want to leave," she said. I don't like when people talk about us like we're fake." Nathan reached across the table and held her hand. "Me neither. But you know what's real?" She looked into his eyes. "This," he said. "You and me. What we're building. That's the only thing that matters." She didn't say anything. Just squeezed his hand tightly. The next morning, Nathan stood in front of a podium for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a press event or a business summit. It was a short, unannounced statement outside his company's headquarters. "There's been a lot of talk about my personal life recently," he began, his voice calm. "And I've always believed that what happens behind closed doors doesn't belong in headlines. But today, I'm here to say something not as a CEO, but as a father." He paused. "I met Chloe Monroe on a street corner by chance. Or maybe fate. She is the daughter of a woman I loved deeply and lost too soon. And yes, she is my daughter. No, I wasn't ready. But now, I can't imagine a life without her. And I won't apologize for loving my child." He ended the speech there. No Q&A, no elaboration. He simply walked away, and straight back to the school, where Chloe was waiting at the gates with paint smudges on her hands from art class. "Did it go okay?" she asked. He smiled. "It's already forgotten." And in a way, it was. Nathan's public statement rippled across media outlets with mixed reactions. Some praised his honesty, others questioned his motives. But something unexpected happened in the aftermath. The noise started to fade. Investors, sensing no scandal left to squeeze, moved on to the next big headline. The board of Reed Global, while still skeptical, cooled their pressure. Sales reports stayed steady. The world, as it often did, forgot. But for Nathan, things had fundamentally shifted. He no longer checked headlines first thing in the morning. Instead, he checked Chloe's breakfast plate, made sure she wore her sweater before school, and carried a mental note of her schedule. Music class on Wednesdays, reading group on Fridays. His calendar app now included reminders like Library Day and Pick up new sketchbooks. But not everything was smooth. Chloe had started having nightmares. Nathan found her sitting in the hallway one night, knees hugged to her chest, eyes wide in the dark. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there quiet and shaken. He crouched beside her. "Hey, what is it?" "I dreamed I got taken away," she whispered. "They said I couldn't stay here because..." Because you didn't really want me." Nathan felt the words like a blade. He picked her up gently and carried her back to bed, tucking the blankets around her like armor. "I will fight anyone who tries to take you away," he said softly. "You hear me? Anyone." She didn't answer, but she didn't let go of his hand until morning. Later that week, Ms. Aldridge returned for the scheduled home visit. She inspected the apartment, asked Chloe a series of careful, child-friendly questions. Chloe was nervous at first, but this time, she spoke with clarity. "He makes me feel safe," she said. "He doesn't always know how to do things right, but he always tries. And I know he wants me here." Ms. Aldridge scribbled notes, asked follow-ups. She didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. Before leaving, she paused at the door. "You're doing better than I expected," she said to Nathan. "Keep showing up." He nodded that phrase, "keep showing up," echoing in his mind for days. There were other consequences too, subtler ones. Nathan started losing friends, or rather realizing which ones had only ever cared about status. Invitations to private galas stopped arriving. Partners whispered about his change in priorities. His absence at luxury retreats was noted, then forgotten. But new connections formed. Parents from Chloe's school began recognizing him, not as a CEO, but as her dad. He was invited to school functions, asked for opinions on art displays and bake sales. He learned other fathers' names, learned to pack lunch boxes and sign permission slips. And at night, when Chloe curled up in the corner of the couch with her sketchbook, Nathan often sat across from her, not speaking, just watching her draw. Both of them wrapped in a silence that felt like peace. One evening, as they cleaned up the dinner table together, Chloe looked up suddenly and said, "I don't remember her voice anymore." Nathan paused. "Your mom's?" She nodded, eyes down. "It's like it's fading. I try really hard, but—" He put a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. But what if I forget all of her?" "You won't," he said. "Because I'll help you remember. Every time you want to talk about her, we will." That night he pulled out an old storage box, the one that had stayed untouched in his closet for years. Inside were photos of Rachel, letters, even a recorded voicemail from years ago. He played it. Chloe leaned in, listening. And when the message ended, her eyes were full. "I remember that laugh," she whispered. Nathan didn't say anything. He just held her hand, silently promising that no part of her past would be erased. By spring, the penthouse no longer felt like a museum. Chloe's room had morphed into a world of soft lights, hand-painted stars on the walls, and shelves filled with books and art supplies. The living room now hosted a patchy green bean plant she insisted on growing in a glass jar. The fridge had magnets with doodles and grocery lists in two handwritings, one big, neat and corporate, the other small, messy, and full of hearts. And Nathan had changed. It was subtle at first. Fewer late nights at the office, a slower pace in the mornings. But as weeks passed, the shift became impossible to ignore. He was no longer trying to fit Chloe into the margins of his life. He was rewriting the margins entirely. At her school's parent-student talent night, Chloe signed up for the art display. She stood beside her drawings proudly, charcoal sketches of city skylines, tiny portraits of a man in a suit making pancakes. "That's you," she said with a little grin when Nathan leaned in to look. He couldn't stop smiling. Later that evening, one of the other parents approached him, a woman named Denise, whose daughter was in Chloe's class. "You're Nathan Reed, right?" she asked. "The real estate guy?" He gave a small nod. "I've seen your name in the news. I just wanted to say, whatever people say about you, she clearly adores you, and she's thriving. That's what matters." It was the first time in months he heard someone acknowledge his past without holding it against him. At home, Chloe was evolving too. She began to ask deeper questions about his childhood, about Rachel, about what made people leave and stay. Nathan answered them honestly, even when it was uncomfortable. One night, while brushing her teeth, Chloe looked at him through the mirror. "Do you think I'm like her? My mom?" He met her gaze in the reflection. "All the best parts, yeah." She rinsed her mouth and turned to face him. "And you?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "Do you think I'm like you?" He crouched down slightly so they were eye level. "You've got my stubborn streak," he said. "And my birthmark." He smiled. "But everything else. That's all you. Smart, brave, curious. Way more than I ever was at your age." She grinned and skipped off to bed. That night, after she'd fallen asleep, Nathan sat alone in the living room, flipping through the old notebook he kept in his drawer, the one Rachel had sent him after they split. Inside were sketches, notes, pieces of a life he never got to live. He realized something. He had always chased greatness in the world outside. Buildings, deals, legacies. But he never thought to build anything inside himself. Until Chloe. And now, with her, he was doing just that. It wasn't always smooth. Some days were frustrating. When Chloe missed Rachel, when Nathan felt inadequate, when the shadow of public scrutiny still echoed online. But they kept showing up. For each other. For the ordinary, messy, beautiful moments that made a real life. One Saturday, while walking home from the corner bookstore, Chloe tugged at his sleeve. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. If my mom could see us now, what do you think she'd say?" Nathan paused. Looked down at her. "I think she'd be proud of you." Chloe tilted her head. "Just me?" He smiled. "And maybe a little proud of me, too." She seemed to accept that, nodding thoughtfully. When they got home, she disappeared into her room for an hour and emerged holding a canvas she'd been working on for weeks. It was a simple painting. A tall glass building, almost like one of Nathan's developments, with a tree growing out of the roof. And on the roof, a small girl holding hands with a man in a suit. Above them, in careful handwriting, it said, "This is how we grow." Nathan didn't speak. He just knelt, took the painting gently, and hugged her, longer than usual. And in that moment he knew. This wasn't a detour from his life. It was his life. As summer approached, Nathan began preparing for something he never thought he'd do. Step away, truly step away, from the company he built. It started with a conversation in the mirror. The man staring back at him no longer looked like a corporate machine. There was softness around his eyes, lines from real laughter, a calm he couldn't quite explain. He called Miranda into his office one morning. She stepped in, clutching her tablet, ready to rattle off his week. "I'm going to take a sabbatical," he said. She froze. "You... what?" "3 months, maybe more. I'll delegate most of the oversight. Keep key approvals with me, but I won't be attending board meetings or daily calls." Miranda raised an eyebrow. "Is this because of Chloe?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment, then set her tablet down. "You're doing the right thing." That same day, Nathan met again with Ms. Aldridge. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to show her the long-term plan. He presented documentation, legal guardianship paperwork, enrollment confirmations for Chloe's fall semester, a revised living trust with her name in it. He explained the sabbatical, the therapy sessions he and Chloe had started attending together. His intention to make this permanent in every way. Ms. Aldridge studied the papers carefully, then looked at him over her glasses. "I don't often say this, Mr. Reed," she said, "but you've come a long way." He nodded. "She brought me here." Later that week, Nathan found Chloe on the rooftop garden they had started together, a quiet project just for them. She was checking the tiny tomato plants, whispering encouragements under her breath like they were people. She turned when she heard his steps. "We should name them," she said, pointing to 2 sprouts. This one's growing faster. Maybe she's bossy." He laughed. "Sounds like someone I know." She stuck her tongue out at him. "I have something to tell you," he said. "Something important." She stood up, brushing dirt from her hands. "I'm going to be home with you this summer. No work, just us." Her eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really. That means camp drop-offs, beach weekends, pancake Sundays, everything. If you'll let me." She looked thoughtful, then nodded solemnly. "I'll allow it." They both laughed. But behind the lightness, Nathan felt the weight of everything they'd been through. The sacrifices, the choices, the slow undoing of an identity he once believed was unshakable. Chloe had reshaped his world, and now he was choosing her over all of it. And yet, a final thread still lingered. In his bedroom drawer sat a letter, unopened. It had arrived 2 weeks earlier from Rachel's old attorney, marked, "To be delivered upon her passing." He hadn't had the courage to read it. Until that night. After Chloe fell asleep, Nathan sat on the balcony with the city glowing behind him and opened the envelope. The letter was short. "Nathan, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if Chloe found you, I'm proud of her. I hope she found you kind. I never stopped believing there was good in you, just that you didn't know how to give it yet. But if you're reading this, maybe now you do. She's special. More than I can put into words. Be better for her than we were for each other. And if you can, love her like she's your whole world. Because she will be." Our Nathan stared at the paper until the ink blurred behind his eyes, and he whispered into the night, "I promise." It started like any normal Saturday. Nathan and Chloe were headed to a farmer's market just outside the city, a tradition they had recently adopted. She was in the back seat of the SUV, humming something from a Disney soundtrack, clutching a cloth tote bag she decorated with stickers, and her name in glitter glue. Nathan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, heart full. Then the phone rang. He ignored it at first, but it rang again. And again. Finally, he answered through the car's hands-free system. It was Miranda. "There's a problem," she said. "Someone leaked internal documents from the company." Nathan's grip tightened on the wheel. "Details?" "Financial projections, some emails, and there's mention of Chloe, her enrollment, the guardianship paperwork, even notes from your therapist. It's all out there." Nathan's pulse spiked. "Who did it?" "An anonymous submission to the press, but we're tracing the access. It looks like it came from inside." He swore under his breath. "Damage? Bad. Headlines are flying. Accusations of fraud, manipulation, using a child for emotional marketing. Someone's building a narrative against you, and fast." Nathan ended the call with a promise to follow up. He looked back at Chloe. She was still humming, oblivious to the firestorm gathering outside the car windows. For a second he considered turning around, hiding, protecting her from it all. But then he remembered Rachel's letter. "Love her like she's your whole world." No more hiding. At the market he stayed close to Chloe, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. People stared, some whispered, a few even pointed. Nathan heard his name, headlines, accusations. But he didn't flinch. Chloe noticed. "Why are people looking at us weird?" He crouched beside her. "Because sometimes the world doesn't understand what it doesn't see." She tilted her head. "But we're not doing anything wrong." He smiled, his voice steady. "Exactly." That night, back home, Nathan received a call from Ms. Aldridge. "I saw the articles," she said. "I need to ask you directly. Has Chloe been used in any of your public or professional strategies?" He didn't even hesitate. "Never." There was silence on the line. Then her voice softened. "She seems happy, stronger, more settled than I've ever seen her. You're not perfect, Mr. Reed, but I believe you love her." "I do." "There's a review board meeting next week," she said. "Final step. I'll advocate for you, but be ready." He was. On the day of the hearing, Nathan wore no tie. He brought no lawyers. Just Chloe, who insisted on carrying the folder with her schoolwork inside. "In case they want to know I'm smart." The review board sat in a conference room. 5 people, neutral expressions, clipboards in hand. Chloe sat beside Nathan, feet dangling from her chair, wearing a blue dress with sunflowers on it. Her hair was tied with a ribbon Rachel once made. Questions followed, about routines, discipline, school, safety, intentions. Then one of the board members, a stern woman with gray curls, leaned forward. "Mr. Reed, why do you want custody of Chloe Monroe?" Nathan didn't look at the paper in front of him. He didn't repeat the prepared statement. He looked at Chloe. "Because she's the first person who ever needed me without asking for anything in return. Because I was lost before she walked into my life. And because she deserves a father who wakes up every day trying to be worthy of her trust." Chloe leaned against him, small hand in his. The room was quiet. Another question came. "Chloe, do you feel safe with Mr. Reed?" She looked at the board, then at Nathan. "Yes," she said, "but not just safe. Loved." That night after the hearing, they returned home exhausted but hopeful. Nathan made hot chocolate. Chloe chose a movie. As the credits rolled, she looked up at him sleepily from the couch. "Do you think she knows?" she asked. "Who?" "My mom. That I'm okay." Nathan nodded. "I think she knows everything." Chloe smiled, then rested her head against his chest. And in that moment, no press, no shareholders, no audience, Nathan finally understood what it meant to build something that couldn't be bought, sold, or taken. It was this. Just this. The letter from the family court arrived 3 days later. It was thin, unceremonious, the kind of envelope most people would overlook. But Nathan knew the weight it carried. He opened it slowly, hands steady, eyes scanning the lines until he reached the one that mattered. "Permanent legal guardianship granted." He read it twice. Then again. And when the words settled, he felt something he hadn't in a very long time. Relief. He called Chloe into the kitchen. She was barefoot, still in her pajamas, hair a sleepy mess. "It came," he said simply. Her eyes widened. "Really?" He handed her the letter. She scanned it with wide, careful eyes, lips moving silently. "Does that mean I stay?" He nodded. "You stay. Forever, if you'll have me." She launched forward, arms around his waist, holding tight. "You're stuck with me now," she said into his chest. He smiled. "Best thing that's ever happened to me." That weekend, they celebrated in their own way. Pancakes for dinner. A visit to the little lake upstate where Chloe liked to sketch. Nathan turned off his phone completely. No emails, no calls. Just the quiet rhythm of Chloe's laughter, her small hand in his, and the way she tilted her head toward the wind like it was speaking only to her. At night, as he tucked her in, she held out the stuffed bear he once bought without knowing if she'd even stay a night. "You can keep him in your room now," she said. "Just in case you forget I'm yours." He didn't reply, just kissed her forehead and held the bear like it was made of gold. Later, standing by the window, he looked out over the city. It was all still there. The towers he built, the life he'd once chased. But now, behind him, in a room with teal walls and glow-in-the-dark stars, slept the only thing that truly mattered. Not his legacy. His daughter. 1 year later, Chloe stood at the front of her school auditorium, holding a certificate with her name in big, bold letters. Most improved student. She beamed as the crowd clapped. In the back row, Nathan clapped louder than anyone. Afterward, she ran to him, arms outstretched. He lifted her up like he had 100 times before. like he'd do 1,000 more. "Ready to celebrate?" he asked. She nodded. "Can we get pancakes?" He grinned. "Always." As they walked toward the car, hand in hand, Nathan glanced at her and thought, "This is the life I didn't know I was missing." If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the unexpected bonds that can change a life forever. Sometimes family isn't planned, it's found. And when it is, it's worth fighting for. Tell us in the comments, what part of Nathan and Chloe's journey moved you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, powerful stories like this one. Share this with someone who believes in second chances and new beginnings. Thank you for being part of this story. Until next time.